Last New Year's Day, I went out to Coney Island to watch the Polar Bear Club take their annual dip in the frigid waters off of Lower Brooklyn. It was fun, but the trip got me thinking about the Cyclone roller coaster and that I'd never taken a ride on it. I remember when we lived in Brooklyn, I would beg my mother to take me, which in typical Coney Island hyperbole was said to be the biggest in the world. She would warn me, now, when you get on it, you can't get off. Remember that, Joey, you won't be able to get off. Now, this was when I was about 5 years old, so I hope I can be forgiven for taking this to mean that we would be on the ride for the rest of our lives, which would have been just fine with me, by the way. But I was too small for the Cyclone, or at least that's what my mother told me, so we went on the Tornado, which was a spectacular roller coaster and was more than enough to scare the living daylights out of me. I mentioned this to her recently, and she said that she remembers that day and that she was frightened too. Memory is a funny thing, because what I remember is her holding her hands over her head and laughing like a crazy woman. The Cyclone was built in 1927, and except for the parachute jump, which hasn't worked since 1964, is the last thing that remains from the old Coney Island. I decided I'd better get a ride on it while I still could, and headed for Brooklyn. The Cyclone is operated by the company that runs Luna Park, which is named for its Coney Island predecessor that's famous for burning down in 1944. Somebody's investing a lot of money there because it is packed with lots of good rides, some for little kids, but plenty for older ones too. They've retained some of the old school attractions, like the Wonder Wheel, but updated them to use 21st century technology. On this one, the cars glide around inside the wheel's spokes, and it looks like it could be fun. My aunts used to tell us about a ride called the Loop-de-Loop, whose cars went upside down and required more than your average level of courage to take a ride on. This looks like a higher capacity 2014 version. I used to love banging into everyone on the bumper cars, which had a rod that ran from the car to the ceiling, and it literally threw off sparks and left the air smelling of ozone. The games for winning stuffed animals come down to aiming water pistols at targets that advance a variety of cartoon characters down a track. Very little skill is needed, but the barkers are pretty colorful and add a touch of old-fashioned carnival hucksterism.
Look at number 4 go again. Here comes number 12. It's 412.
There's a haunted house, and though it's probably not staffed by the hobo zombies I reckoned working them when I was a kid, it still looks a little slapdash and low rent, which in my opinion is how they're supposed to look. Nathan's is there, and frozen custard stands, and sellers of hand-cut french fries, but I was not there to eat, I was there to ride the Cyclone. I brought a little video camera and took these pictures. Now that is what you call an old-school roller coaster ride. Even though the entire roller bed has been replaced, it is nothing like the rock-solid, computer-modeled coasters that they're welding together these days out of inch-thick tubular steel. I guess getting your brains rattled a little bit is part of the Cyclone's attraction, and there were some really abrupt, I'd say almost violent twists that threw me around the car and up against the padded bar across my lap. I came off feeling a little like I'd been punched in the stomach a couple of times, and my knees got banged up too. Still, I couldn't wait to do it again, so I sprang for another $9 and got back on. The second ride passed even faster than the first, but I guess that's how it is with roller coasters. Afterwards, from the street, I watched people rush through the serpentine steel gated queue and push through the turnstile and race for a car. I thought of my 5-year-old self standing with my mother in front of that very roller coaster, perhaps on that very spot, wondering how it was that we would have to ride on it forever. Yeah, I know it's impossible, but I have to admit, it still sounds like a pretty decent idea.